People of God, we are privileged to be standing in front of you and to testify of what God of Prophet Emmanuel Makandiwa and Prophetess Ruth Emmanuel Makandiwa is doing amongst us. It's always a wonderful privilege, men of God, to come before the people of God and herald the news of what's happening in the kingdom of God.
You know, Doc, what is happening in this place is nerve-striking. There are some things that you hear and you feel a chill down your spine.
That's true.
Because you know it's beyond the usual things that you can ever think of. You know, there are things that we all thought these are things that happened in the Bible. But we see it happening amongst us through the hands of our Father, where the life of Jesus is being exhibited at its greatest extent. And, you know, today's testimony, you can't just help but shed tears.
That's true. You know, there are testimonies where you are very excited. But this one, I don't know. I have excitement filled with fear, filled with goosebumps, that feeling of goosebumps, because of the nature of the testimony. People of God, without spending much of your time, let's call upon Mr. and Mrs. Gondongwe to come forward.
Come on, let's clap our hands, let's clap our hands, let's clap our hands.
We welcome you, Mr. and Mrs. Gondongwe, and we thank you for accepting this privilege to come and to share your testimony.
Thank you, Doc.
And we know and we understand that it's a very massive testimony that you have. And just to give a background, people of God, our Father gave us the 92 days of miracles, of God doing great and mighty things. And this testimony, it happened on the very last day. If we remember, we came to church on the 18th of June. That was the 91st day. The 92nd day was the 19th of June. And I'm sure him, like other people, might have been saying, I think these 92 days were not for me. Maybe they were meant for someone else. But then something happened to this family, and it was life-changing. Babanamai, just to come back to you, maybe you can narrate to us what happened on this particular day. Or maybe what were your expectations, Mr. Gondongwe, of the 92 days? What were you praying for? What were your expectations? Maybe we can start at that.
Thank you, Doc. For me, the 92 days, I remember on the very Sunday before the 19th, I think it was the 18th, as I was driving to church, I was thinking to myself, the 92 days are almost over, but I haven't seen anything significant in my business. My mind was, the 92 days, it channeled my mind financially. That's the only thing that I could think of, breakthroughs, landmark deals and all. So to me, it was a worry. The 92 days are almost over, which my father declared. Maybe it's not my time as yet. That's what I thought.
But as we will go on through the testimony, you realize that even the service, which was held on the 18th, it was for you. It was for your family. Everything. You know, you learn that there is no coincidence in the house of God. Every statement that the man of God utters is full of meaning. It's a prophecy. every statement, even a smile, even a frown, whatever it does, you realize that it means something. It means something. So let's go to the 19th. What happened on the 19th of June?
The 19th, Doc, began just like any other normal day. I was about to drive home to go to work, but for some reason I felt lethargic. I just couldn't drive. I thought I was ill, but to my surprise I was not. So I just decided to work from home that very day. And I called the office and I told them that if there's any meeting, please call me, give me a 15 minutes heads up, then I'll drive, then I'll come to the office. So I went back inside and I sat on my laptop. I was with my young brother, who also was working from home, so he decided just to come and spend the day with me since we're home together. So as I was working, my young boy, who's about 1 year, 8 months, came to my laptop and was putting his chin on my keyboard. And I was at the phone at the same time. So I just instructed the house help to just take the boy away and just to make sure I keep him busy. So a few minutes later, the maid was thinking she was doing a normal laundry in the bathroom for the little one. And I was in the dining room, and the mother had just arrived from night duty from a workplace. And my young brother was there, and everyone was just busy and caught up in what they were doing. So 5-7 minutes later, the maid came and said, "Where's Mfaro?" And I said, "No, I don't know. Please just look for him," because he had gone outside.
Sorry, so your son, he had kind of disappeared from the radar.
Yes, from the time I gave the maid the sign to, I gave the maid the sign to just keep him busy. I think it was 5 to 7 minutes, I hadn't seen him. That's when the maid came back and she said, "I was hanging my clothes outside. Where's the little man?" And I said, "I haven't seen him." So she went into the passage, there was no kid. She went into the bathroom. As she got into the bathroom, she said, "I noticed that prior to the disappearance, she had changed the little boy the tracksuit." So she was wondering, "I changed this tracksuit about 10 minutes ago. Why is it in a bucket of water?"
So the tracksuit that the child was wearing was now in the bucket of water.
Yes,
and she hadn't put it there.
She had not put it there. That's what startled her.
How much was the water in that container?
It was a 100-liter bucket container, and there was about 50 liters of water in there.
Okay.
Yes. So, and it was dirty water and full of washing powder and detergents. So when she tried to pull out the tracksuit, then she discovered that it was a baby. The little boy was submerged in water. Lifeless. The only thing she could do was to call.
So that's the bucket over there.
That's the bucket over there.
It's a 100-liter bucket.
It's a 100-liter bucket.
And it was full of water.
Yes.
Dirty water after
Dirty
the laundry.
water. Yes.
There was washing powder in there.
Yes, and detergents in there.
So the child was pulled out lifelessly. Can you just describe the situation of what you saw?
When she pulled out the baby, she just said, "Daddy manyai." Then I ran. When I grabbed the baby had turned gray in the face. The face was now swollen and was lifeless.
So he was found in the bucket face down.
Face down.
Immersed in water.
Immersed in water.
No one knows for how many minutes he had been like that.
No one knows for how many minutes. The only thing visible was that tracksuit outside.
So what did you do after that?
I grabbed the baby, but in panic and shock, I just shouted, "Mwana, mwana, mwana." And when I shouted, I grabbed the baby. I noticed that the tummy had grown three times the size. He was not breathing. The face was swollen. There was no life, man of God. No life whatsoever. And I knew that the boy is gone. I tried to press the tummy. Nothing happened. That's when my young brother came to help me. He took the baby. He pressed as well. There was no sign of life. The baby was just wet. That's when my wife woke up after she heard the screams.
Mama, you were coming from night duty. What kind of work do you do?
Thank you, Doc. I'm a receptionist at the health institution.
Okay, so you work at a health institution.
Yes.
So when you heard all this screaming and all the pandemonium, what happened?
At first, when I heard my husband screaming, "Mwana, mwana, mwana," at first I ignored because I was tired and I wanted to rest. So I was like, let my husband deal with whatever is happening. I need to rest. But then I noticed the tone of his voice. It worried me. And then I said, let me just wake up and see what is happening. Then I'll come back and rest. So when I woke up, I went into the dining. Then I found my maid just folding her hands. And I'm asking, what is happening? And she was just quiet. Then I went into the kitchen. I asked, what happened? And then my husband was like, "Mwana anyura mumvura." And I was like, "Anyura, arikufema here?" And then he said, "Haasi kufema." At that moment, I started crying, calling out his name, "Mufaro, Emmanuel, Mufaro." I rushed to my brother-in-law and I grabbed the child away from him. When I looked at him, he was gray. There was no life. So at that time, I panicked. I was crying. And I just told them, let's rush to my workplace. So my brother-in-law was, "No, we can't go to your workplace because it's too far. We have to find the nearest clinic where we can get assistance." So that's when we just rushed into the car and then we drove. The nearest is about less than 5 minutes from where I stay. So when we got to the hospital, my husband then took the child away from me and rushed into the hospital, and I was following behind. At that time, I was still crying, calling out his name. And when we got into the hospital, my husband just went into the consultation room and dropped the child on the bed and left the room. But I followed behind and stayed in the room. So because of the panic that we arrived with, most of the nurses left whatever they were doing and came to attend to the baby. So they started asking what happened, and I was like, I don't know what happened. All I know is my son drowned in water.
Sorry, just to hold you off there. We've got a medical record of the doctor who saw the baby first. Media team, if you can show us the letter, the record of what the doctor wrote. So that's the letter, that's the medical record. Maybe show us the next image, which is kind of a close-up image. Okay, thank you. So it's written PC. PC means presenting complaint. Child drowned in a water container at home a few minutes ago. OE means on examination. LOC stands for level of consciousness, 3 out of 15. So when the level of consciousness is 3 out of 15, there is no response. A corpse has a level of consciousness of 3 out of 15. That's the lowest you can ever get to. And they write about cyanosis plus. Cyanosis, it means there's no oxygen in the body. You know, the mouth or the eyes, the eyelids, under the eyelids is supposed to be pink. But if it's cyanosed, it becomes blue. I think that's the color they are talking about, that the child was gray. So they talk about cyanosis. Pulses, they checked the pulses. There is a statement, peripheral pulse, collapsed. Okay? And then I underlined another statement there, pupils fixed and dilated. I am sure every doctor knows what it means when you say pupils are fixed and dilated.
Maybe doctor, us, we need to understand, what does this conclude when someone has been reported in this structure? What does that mean?
Man of God, if you watch a movie and you are seeing a doctor who is certifying a person that is dead, one of the things that we do is you take a torch, you look at the eyes, and you look for response. So naturally, the eyes are supposed to respond to light. There is what we call pupil inside the eyes. It closes or it constricts. But if you shine a torch and the eyes are remaining dilated, it means either the child is dead or if it's not dead, the brain is dead. It's now brain dead. Because if you analyze the notes again, the heartbeat was still there, though it was slow, but the brain function had ceased. You see there it's written HS, it means heart sounds. They tick 1, they tick 2. So the heart sounds were there, but the brain function was gone. And then there's another statement written, CPR initiated immediately. So CPR stands for cardiopulmonary resuscitation. So they started resuscitating the baby. And they say lasted 45 minutes. It's very unusual that you do CPR for 45 minutes.
So what is the time that normally a CPR is supposed to be conducted? And maybe also, if you could help us, what usually happens if a CPR lasts that long?
Well, men of God, lots of things are happening. This is a child who has been immersed in a bucket of water and was not breathing. The lungs are probably full of water. We know medically that the brain requires oxygen every time. The brain is the largest consumer of oxygen and of glucose in the body. So if the brain is starved of oxygen for more than 5 minutes, the person becomes brain dead and recovery is next to zero. So if you look at the time when the baby was missing, no one knows how long it was. If you look at the time when they removed the baby from the water, all the screaming and the panicking, and then the decision to take the baby to the hospital, time is going. And then driving to the institution, all that time the child is not breathing. We say medically time is brain, because the brain is the most important function. I know people will say time is money. He's a businessman, to him time is money. But to us time is brain. The more you delay giving oxygen to the brain, you have lost the person completely.
So we can actually say this was now a situation of no hope. Everything in this place was quite outside the speck of hope.
Exactly, man of God. I'll use a crude word. A person or a body who is like that in the hospital, we call them, this is now an organ donor. You know that the brain is gone. The heart might be there, the kidneys, they take maybe a few more hours. In the foreign countries, they will take such a body, put on a resuscitator or intubate, put on a ventilator, and then wait to harvest the body organs and donate to people who have illnesses who require the organs. So at this point, the baby is an organ donor. There is no life.
From my layman's terms, I stand to be corrected, but what I'm seeing from this description, the child is actually dead.
Yes, yes. Maybe you can bring back that slide, media team. Okay. So they say resuscitated for 45 minutes, oral suctioning, they were suctioning the mouth, removing the water which the child had inhaled or breathed in. And they write about pink frothy sputum. So this is an indication that even the lungs, they are swollen. So all that fluid which is pink and frothy is coming from the lungs. And then they say reassessed the child after 45 minutes. LOC, which is level of consciousness, now it has improved. It's now 10 out of 15. But still, that's not good enough. You and I, we are 15 out of 15. Okay? 10 out of 15, it's an improvement, but it's still critical. That's when they say the child was transferred to, we didn't want to show the name of the place for obvious reasons. So tell us what's happening now during this scene of the resuscitation. What is happening in the hospital?
Okay, I had left out a part. While we were on our way to the hospital, I noticed that my child's hands and feet were now stiff. And I couldn't even bend his hand. At that time, I was like, we are now going to the hospital, but this is just for confirmation that my child is dead, because we always hear that when someone dies, their hands and legs, they go stiff.
Okay. This is something else. So the hands are stiff, they are straight. The legs are stiff, they are straight. You know, medically we call it, there's another note which the doctor wrote. I understand you went to this medical center and then you decided to pass through a workplace. The doctor assessed again. We've got the note of the second institution. Maybe you can show us that note, media team. Okay. So this is the note now of the second institution. You know, you are desperate, you just want to hear some good news. Okay, show us the next slide after this. Okay, so this is now the second medical center. They talk about there is the pulse, which is 96. A child of that age, 1 year, 96 is a low pulse. You want a pulse of above 120. Temperature there is written as 34.8. You know, a human being cannot survive with a temperature of 34. We all know that. The next thing. Okay. So on that screen, you can see they write abnormal posturing, and they write decerebrate posturing, neck extended. So this is now another doctor. So this kind of posture, which the doctor had written as decerebrate rigidity, it's a sign of severe brain injury. This is where you have a person where the brain has had no oxygen for some time, so the brain is dying if not dead. So the child's hands and legs are straight, so they are like this.
So that's a sign that there is a brain damage.
Yes, we call it decerebrate rigidity, and it's a sign that the brain is gone. And medically, we know that less than 10% of children with decerebrate rigidity will ever come back to life. And if they are to come back to life, they are coming back, but not as the child that you had before. They are coming back as maybe somebody with cerebral palsy, somebody who is maybe like a vegetable. You can't do anything besides just feeding him. There is no life, no quality of life, nothing. But coming back, our father had said something on the Sunday service. He was just talking about honor. We remember he talked about honor on the Sunday. Maybe media team, you can help us to relive the statement that he said.
You can see children are dying and fathers are burying their sons. Fathers are burying their sons. In the Bible, I'm not sure whether Jesus knew that that young boy's father was sick. But he said, the young boy had said, let me go, I'll bury my father first and then I come and I follow you. I don't know how he knew that the father would die first. And then he buries his father. And then he comes and he follows Jesus. He said, give me some few days. Let me wait for the old man to die. I bury him and then I'll come and I'll follow you. They knew it at that time, that death has to follow the order. Death has to follow a certain structure. But nowadays, you have to bury your son, and there is nothing as terrible as that, as a father.
You hear what our father is saying. And you know, it's not just a coincidence that he says that statement. It's not by coincidence. You know that something is about to happen whenever our father says those statements. And here you have an example of a father who is about to bury his son.
And exactly as the man of God had actually said, that was actually what was happening in his life. That's when you realize that when our Father speaks, He just doesn't speak out of nowhere. He's prophetic. And you've said something at the beginning, you say that when He spoke, it was a miracle that He Himself, our Father, was already making for Him to save His family from losing a child. Because
Exactly.
imagine being a father and bearing your son, especially a son of that age, 1 year, 8 months.
It's torture, man of God. It's torture. He said the son was saying, let me wait for my old man to die. You know, that says a lot, that statement, that this gentleman is supposed to become an old man eventually, and then his son will come and bury him when he's old, not now. So that's another prophecy for him again, that you are not going to die now. Your son will bury you when you're an old man. But all of us, we just thought, maybe it's just a statement that our Father is saying. But you'll see with the sequence of the events of that service, you'll notice that this gentleman and this lady, it was your service that day. All right, let's come back to what is happening in the... I understand there was a lot of movement, lots of unsettling in this medical center. What was happening?
So when we got to the first medical center, when I followed my husband into the room and he left, I was in there. So the nurses in there were trying to get me to leave the room, but I refused. Until a certain lady just came and grabbed my hand and said, daughter, come, let's pray. And at the back of my mind, I'm saying, they are just managing me. How can you tell me to come and pray while at least I'm leaving my child to die? So at that time, I left the room with the lady, and then she started praying. It took about 45 minutes. There was no sound or any sign that there was life coming from the child. After about 45 minutes, before that, the doctor just came out and said, don't worry, we'll make it. So we started praying with the lady who had taken me out of the room. After 45 minutes, close to an hour, that's when I heard more of a grunting sound. The child was making a sound like, so at that time, that's when I managed to say, Mwari wemporofita, nezuva rechi 92, when others are busy testifying, am I supposed to bury my child? That was the only thing that I said. And then I asked to go into the room. They allowed me to go in there. He was just lying there, but he was not showing any sign of recovery, but just that sound that was coming in. But that time, all the nurses were now clapping hands and celebrating. And the doctor was like, don't worry, we have made it. The worst is over. We need to rush the baby to the hospital. He needs to be in an ICU.
So from there, you then called some ambulances.
Yes, so the first person I called whilst I was outside, I called my workplace, and I just told them that my child has drowned. And they were asking me, how severe is it? And I was like, I don't know. Just send an ambulance and come and pick my son and bring him there. So at the institution that we were, they tried calling the ambulances, but some of the numbers were not going through. At my workplace, they were also trying to sort out an ambulance to come and pick us up. After about 15 minutes after the child had made that sound, 2 ambulances came at the same time to collect the child. So we then used the first ambulance to go to my workplace. And on our way there, the child was just still making that sound, but even if you try to, now his eyes were open, but even if you wave your hand in front of the eyes, he wasn't showing any sign of respondence to that.
Thank you. I think we also must commend these medical people, because I have seen situations where you do your resuscitation for 10, 15 minutes and you give up. And you just rush and tell the father or the mother that we are sorry, we have done our best, but the child couldn't make it. But they persevered for 45 minutes. That's not a mean feat. So we also must commend them for all their efforts to make sure that life was preserved.
And also, in addition to that, man of God, it's just also a sure sign of how the covering goes. That even the people that are supposed to give up in your situation, because of the grace of our parents in this house,
You
they
are
just
right.
keep on pushing people around. You know, I'm always astounded by the covering, because even in the testimonies that we have brought, that have come here by the grace of our father and mother, we have seen how the hand extends, coming quickly to help, putting more time to make sure whatever that is happening, you know, it's like it is a covering that sits continuously watching over its people until they are taken out of their problem. It's so consistent how the covering is able to do that.
Exactly, man of God.
Man of God, for me, just to add on that one, there's something unusual that happened at the first institution. This doctor, which my wife was alluding to, as she was persevering and trying to resuscitate the baby, she never gave up. And I saw one thing.
So it was a female doctor.
It was a female doctor. She never gave up. And the most unusual thing was she called all her staff and some of the nurse and the nurse aides, and she instructed 3 of the nurse aides to go into one room and pray. Whilst she was resuscitating, everyone.
Wow. This is amazing.
So you can see how much of a dire situation it was. Everyone in the place was panicking.
Yeah.
And the only thing they could resort to.
It's just prayer. So you then passed through your workplace and then went to the 3rd hospital, which had an ICU.
Yes, when we got to my workplace, that's when they said the baby's temperature is too low, the heartbeat is too low, we need to warm the child up, and then they gave him some antibiotics and some fluids, and then they facilitated admission for us to the 3rd institution.
And then he went to the ICU.
Yes.
You know, previously on that Sunday, our father had made a prayer for the fathers because it was a Father's Day. Maybe media team, you can just play for us, just briefly, the prayer that our father made on the day.
Pronounce this blessing over those of you that are here and you are fathers already. I know it is the will of the devil for your family to suffer in your hands. But the will of God is what is going to happen today. May God wipe away your tears. The Lord himself wants to partner with you and help you. Have this grace today as you go forward. Every difficulty will be simplified. In the name that is above every other name. Fathers, even mothers, you are blessed. This is spoken over you, and this word shall stand in Jesus' mighty name.
You hear our father talking about the devil's plans, and you hear him saying every difficulty will be simplified. This was a very difficult situation for him, for this family, but the grace came and simplified everything. So we've got some videos of when the child was now being moved to the ICU, to this other hospital. I know the first instance of where the things were happening, you had no hope. You know, no one thinks of taking a camera and recording everything. during that time when the child is lifeless. You don't want to have those memories. But now, because the child was now making some grunting sounds, you now had hope. That's when you said, let me just record. This might be something coming out, a testimony coming out. Media team, you can show us the recording. So this is the ambulance crew. So that's the way he was now breathing.
He had spent almost, I think this was the second hour breathing this way.
Okay, wow. You know, from the notes, I saw that when you go to the second hospital, the what we call the saturation, you know, in the hospitals, there's what we put on the finger to check the saturation. It was 83%. And that's very low, very, very low. And I saw also the x-ray that the child, that was taken, and it's showing, if the media team is ready, you can show us the x-ray, but it's showing that the lungs were also affected. There is what we call pneumonitis. There is effect that the lungs are affected. There are things which are looking fluffy-like in the lung fields. All the lung tissues are affected with this pneumonitis. Because you can imagine, this child has been in water, dirty water, and was trying to breathe, inhaling all that water, and it flooded the lungs. You can imagine the direness of the situation. So you arrived to this ICU, what happened?
So when we got to the ICU, the pediatrician came and he saw the child and he said, the one thing he asked me, he said, Mama, munona mataire. And then I was like, and ndikati eh. And then he said, now is the time for you to pray. Because the condition of the child as it is right now, I don't mean to scare you, but it's not looking good. We are going to run some tests so that we check if the rest of his organs are not affected.
This is Mufaro when he was now in the ICU.
Yes.
So this is still on Monday, the 19th.
Yes.
Okay. So they did some tests. I went through quite a number of tests that they did. Media team, if you can show us these results. So besides the lungs which were injured, what we call the white blood cell count was very high. That's a result of his full blood count. At the top there where it's highlighted, it says WBC 14.62. So that's a high white cell count. That's a sign of the body trying to fight off any infection. You can show us the next result. And you can see the dates, it's written 19 June. You can show us the next one. So this one is showing what we call cardiac enzymes or the heart enzymes. If you look at all those 4 parameters, they are written H. H means high. So the heart itself was affected. You know, the heart requires oxygen to survive. So if the lungs cannot extract oxygen, it means the heart will also suffer. So this child also suffered kind of a cardiac arrest or a heart attack at the same time. So all the cardiac enzymes are very high. I'm sure the doctor must have told you all that.
Yes, he did.
He actually said, I'll tell you this as a friend. Your son's heart actually stopped. It's
That's
showing,
what he told
That's
you.
what he told me. In Shona, he said, "Yo mfeso wangu ndikandikudze. Mwana wako akatofa kutodzoka kwaita uko." I thought that this is off the record as a friend. Mwana wako akatofa kutodzoka kwaita uko kwatukuita ma tests.
But sorry, thank you. But still, the child is not yet back. He's still grunting. He's not even responding to you. All that is there is the noise breathing. So what happened later during that day?
So during that day, I was with him in the ICU, And then I was told I'm not allowed to spend the night with the child. I was supposed to leave the place at around 5. And by that time, my child hadn't yet woken up. So around 5, when I left, he was still there, lying there, lifeless, on oxygens and all those machines connected on him. So we left the hospital, but we didn't go home. We just left the ICU and went and sat in the car. So we spent about 2 hours waiting outside. For me, I was saying, yes, my son is now alive, but what if something happens while at least I'm not there? How am I going to take it? So I was like to my husband, I don't want to go home now. Let's wait a bit. Maybe they might call us and tell us something has happened. So we were outside around almost to 8 in the evening. That's when we decided, no, let's go home because it was now getting cold. On our way home, I think a few minutes before we reached home, I then received a phone call from the doctor who was attending the child.
Sorry, wait a minute. So you are expecting bad news, and the doctor calls.
That's a phone
That-
call you don't want to receive.
You don't want to receive that phone call.
Considering the state we had left him in.
So what did the doctor say?
So the doctor was like, Mashika kumba here. And I was like, we are almost home, we are on our way. And then he said, I've got good news. So the doctor then said, your child has woken up. He's now breathing well. I have removed him on oxygen.
So all this is happening in one day,
A matter of hours.
I want
from unresponsiveness, hypothermia, low body temperature, low oxygen, cardiac arrest, decerebrate rigidity, everything. And then in one day, everything is now reversing.
In one day
no.
of oxygen.
I want to ask you, doctor. I want to ask you. I want to understand.
I hope I'll be able to answer.
This case, you said cerebral rigidity.
Okay, I've got some slides. Maybe the media team, you can come to those slides so that you can. Okay, this is a slide which I found on National Library of Medicine, USA. They talk about decerebrate posture is an abnormal body posture that involves the arms and the legs being held straight out and toes pointed downwards. The head and neck are arched backwards. The muscles are tightened and held in rigidity. This type of posture usually means there's severe damage to the brain. Okay. It's not me who is saying this. You can show us the next slide.
Still, you're going to allow me to ask my question?
Look at that. Outlook recovery for posturing after brain injury. It is suggested that 37% of individuals with decorticate posturing after head injury survive. In contrast, only 10% of individuals who demonstrate decerebrate, this is what the child had, decerebrate posturing survive. So the chance of survival, we're talking about survival, we are not talking about the state of survival. Just survival, the chance was 10%. But we know that those who survive, among those 10%, almost 100% of them are not 100% in terms of mental capacity. They are paralyzed, they have signs of what we call cerebral palsy. It's a child whom you can only feed, they can't feed by themselves, they can't even relieve them, go to the toilet, they are just stuck to one place.
It's like a cabin.
Exactly.
But I still want to ask my question, Doc. Please allow me. I want to understand, with all the complexities that you have actually brought about right now that the child is supposed to be paralyzed, a cabbage, and not being able to do anything. Fine. Say 10% of them recover. I would want to know the rate of recovery.
Survive.
Of surviving.
They don't say they recover, they say 10% survive. Yes.
So-
you are just alive.
So we are saying for this child, we are anticipating the worst, even if the child recovers.
Exactly.
So tell me, if someone is going to say they recover, do they recover in less than 24 hours?
Not at all, men of God. People who manage these near drowning cases, that's the term that we use. If you say someone is drowned, it means someone is dead. But if someone survives, the diagnosis is near drowning. So we don't say somebody is drowned while they're alive. Okay? So near drowning cases, they tend to linger in ICU for a long time, a minimum of 2 weeks. And in some cases, us as doctors, we have to induce the coma. You have to suppress the brain so that it recovers. So you have a medically induced coma to try and save the brain cells which are still there. Because we know the child will fit, will have convulsions, there will have so many things happening. So you want to suppress all that. So you're supposed to put them in a medically induced coma. And you're supposed to lower even the brain temperature to even 35 degrees so as to salvage a few cells, some of the cells that are left.
From the way that you're explaining it, it actually shows this is actually a very complex.
It's a prolonged recovery, man of God, which can take months. The 2 weeks is a minimum for this induced coma. You can have it even for longer than that. And then after that, the recovery is going to be slow. This is a child who needs rehabilitation, physiotherapy, speech therapy, all those things. So the child has to learn to sit, to crawl, to stand, even the language and all those things, because the child loses all those milestones. But in one day, the doctor is now saying your child is recovered, is breathing well, is now off oxygen. You know, even if I were, for a doctor to remove a child off oxygen, it's not an easy decision. It means you have removed the oxygen, you are checking the saturation, you are there for maybe 15, 20 minutes, just making sure it's not coming down, because we don't want to make mistakes there. But if you see them saying oxygen is stopped, you know that something has happened.
I'm mostly amazed by what you're saying, that as doctors, there are certain things that happen that are actually difficult for you to just do randomly, that you have to do step by step. But I'm hearing that this is now happening within at least 5 hours after the child was admitted. And to me, it actually makes me feel an electricity in my spine, because
it is.
I want to know how normal is it if you're going to meet such a situation in your life, and you have met most like this.
It's not normal.
How are they? Are they such things that happen like this, Doc?
No, not at this pace, man of God. We know that when they recover, they are retarded. If they recover, not when, if they recover. Yeah.
Now curiosity is now taking a toll. I want to know. I want to see the baby.
Maybe before we go to that, on Tuesday now, on the 20th, you then visited the baby. What was happening?
On Tuesday, we woke up and prepared, and we were by the hospital at around 9 a.m. They had told me that I'm only allowed in at 10. But when I got there at 9, I just told my husband, he said, let me just go in. And he said, yes, please go. So when I got in there, I met a few nurses in the elevator. And they were like, Ndimi maiva mfaro. And then I was like, yes, zvikanzi, mwana wenyu akativhundutsa nezuro. But right now, he is playing.
Playing.
Yes.
Yet, doctor, you say that mostly if a child or any person gets into such a
They are
condition,
not supposed to be playing.
they are not supposed to be playing,
no.
especially in that time frame.
No, that's not possible.
You say that it's mostly that you have to train them how to sit, how
Exactly.
to talk, how to do everything.
Exactly, all the milestones.
And yet this nurse is saying your child is playing.
Okay. So when you went upstairs,
So when I got to the IC room, I asked the sister who was on the station, I said, am I allowed to go inside? And then she was like, yes, sure, you can go in. Your child is actually playing. So when I walked into the room, I saw him lifting up his legs, playing on the bed. So when I went inside, when he saw me, he started crying. Maybe it was a cry of trying to tell me, where were you, mommy, all along?
wow. So even the mental faculties are back. He can recognize his mother.
Yes,
You know, people who are, that's him there.
yes.
So this is day what? This
This
is
is
the
on
second
Tuesday.
day.
This
The
is Tuesday morning.
Less than 24 hours later.
Doc, what time are we going to see the baby?
I know you want. There's another video of the baby in the hospital. You can show us the media team if you are ready. Oh, that's him. Ari kutodya skoni zvake. This is Tuesday.
Yes,
Tuesday
and that
morning.
was his first meal since Monday. That was around 11 a.m. on Tuesday. That was his first meal since Monday.
He had last eaten on Monday morning. This is now Tuesday midday. Wow.
Doc, is this supposed to be happening to any other?
Man of God, this is a miracle. That's the only explanation. It's not supposed to happen. We know that. And I know there might be skeptics, people who don't believe these things. This child moved from one medical center to the next and then to a bigger hospital. All the medical records are there. This is a real case of things that happened, which you can take up, investigate. You can take this case up, investigate, talk to the doctors, talk to the nurses, talk to all the medical people. Yeah, I know people will say, zvitikesha. And then you, even if you are not medical, you can go to the literature, you start reading for yourself, and you get the information. You learn that this is impossible. This doesn't happen.
Please, can we see
Okay.
the baby, Doc, please?
Can you bring the boy?
Come on, people of God. Look at that, people of God. Hey, so this is Mufaro, doctor. Wow, people of God, look at this young man. Full recovery
Or he's
through the
just
hands
looking
of
at
our father and our mother. Come on, people of God, we can do better than this. Just look at that. Just look at that, people of God. A child being brought back to life. You know, there's something that the mother said. She said, I cried and I said, God of my father, in these 92 days,
Exactly.
others are testifying.
And men of God, people of God, you may sit just for a little while. You know, when we started, we were saying nothing happens by coincidence. Nothing in this church happens by coincidence. Do you know, on the day, on the 18th, our father was ministering at the sick bay. And then all of a sudden, he just shouted, VIP Muruguti Gudi. And he started praying for people at the VIP. We know that our father, he rarely prays for people at the VIP. I have witnesses here. He rarely does that. And this gentleman, where were you seated?
I was seated on the second row.
At the VIP.
At the VIP, second row, that's where I was seated.
But when our father prayed for these people, I looked at the video, I didn't see you. Where were you?
Something happened very unusual. That very Sunday, somehow, the Lou was my friend.
So you had gone to the loo.
I had just stood up. I think my father was somewhere there. And it was almost, I thought it's normal. I know how the service is conducted. You know that is about to conclude the service. So let me stand up, let me go and relieve myself and come back whilst he's there. So I stood up, I went to the restroom. When I came through, I stood at that door. Then I saw my father right where I was seated. That's where he was praying for people.
And who was now seated at that place?
My young brother had been following, and he came and sat at the very seat where I'm seated.
Where you were seated.
Where I was seated.
And
he was
who
praying.
drove the child to the hospital?
It was my young brother who drove the child to the hospital.
So, okay, media team, you can play us the clip. In case someone might say, zvakarongwa ndezvekunyepa and all those things. So you see our father there ministering to people at the VIP. And he rarely does that. That's your young brother there. So that's where you initially were seated. And you had vacated the place. So the young brother, he doesn't know what made him to sit there.
People of God, this is Father's Day. It's us who are supposed to minister to him. But look at the compassion. Look at the love. Look at the display of love. He is the one who has gone out of his way to minister to us. Let's celebrate this kind of a father. Let's celebrate and honor.
I am fully convinced that our father, when he said VIP, he was coming for this gentleman. And he might have touched, 40 years there, but the head that he was looking for was this gentleman. And the gentleman had vacated the place, but fortunately, and our father laid the hands on the head of the gentleman, who then happened to be there the moment the event happened, and is the one who drove the family to the hospital. Can you call that a coincidence?
I wanted to, everything that our Father does is calculated. Whatever movement that our Father does is calculated. What's even more surprising, in addition to what you're saying, is the young brother is prayed for here. On the same Monday, they decide to work together at home.
Yes.
He himself feels, I can't go. But the young brother was just there. The man who had the hand of our father on his head was just there. And everything was happening precisely in him being there.
Exactly.
More of like our father's hand was so watchful in everything that was happening in their house. And yet sometimes when our father touches our head, we just think he has touched our hand. Yet that same hand is going with us at home.
Exactly.
And it is actually performing miracles that we most of the time might not recognize. And
This is mind-blowing.
the beauty about this anointing and this covering is that it is an efficient and intelligent anointing.
Exactly.
And we are grateful to God because we're given such parents, people of God.
We can't ask for more men of God. We have the total package in this place. All right, coming back to you. So Tuesday, the child is in ICU. And then what happened?
So around 11, the doctor came in and said, there's no need for us to keep him in ICU because of his improvement. We are going to place him in HDU for the day and see how he progresses, because we need to keep him for 48 hours just in case he might develop pneumonia because of the coldness of the water.
So ICU to HDU, and then what happened?
Around 5
5 in the
that
evening.
very Tuesday, the doctor then said, I'm happy with his progress, so he needs to go to a general ward in preparation for discharge the next day.
Wow. So ICU, HDU, general ward in one day.
Yes,
And when was he discharged?
he was discharged on Wednesday in the morning.
With the severity, Doc, with the explanations that you gave, even if I'm not a doctor, such cases you'd keep a person for a long time
That's true.
in the hospital.
That's true. I think I've got some 2 slides, then we call it a day. You can show us the slides, media team. Okay. So here they are talking about hypoxic ischemic brain injury. This hypo just means low. Oxic refers to oxygen. So if the brain has no oxygen, it becomes injured. There's a statement where they say 2 minutes after immersion, a child will lose consciousness. This is from a website called Medscape. It's famous, we use it as doctors for reference. You can go and look it up. They say after 2 minutes, the child will lose consciousness. Irreversible brain damage occurs after 4 to 6 minutes. Most children who survive are discovered within 2 minutes of submersion. Most children who die are found after 10 minutes. Okay? Let's go to the next one, which is probably the last. Prognosis. So prognosis refers to the outcome, what is going to happen to the baby. What's the outcome? So patients who are alert or mildly obtunded means dazed or confused or something like that, have an excellent chance of full recovery. Patients who are comatose, those receiving CPR at presentation to the emergency department, or those with fixed and dilated pupils. We remember the doctor's notes. The child was comatose, the child had CPR for 45 minutes, the child had fixed and dilated pupils. And those with no spontaneous respirations have a poor prognosis. Okay? You can go on and read. So this child was not supposed to be with us today. The father was supposed to bury the son. And yet the man of God had said, there is a normal sequence of events. The son should bury the old man, not a young father. The son should bury the old man. So you can see everything was talking of direness of the situation. This young boy was gone, but by the grace of God in this place through our Father, the boy is now with us. I've asked you this question, Baba, that how is your child? How is your son? Is he the same son that you had like on Sunday? Or you are noticing some deficiencies on him?
Man of God, it's actually shocking. From the time he was discharged, I've been paying particular attention to every move of his. Because of the immersion in water, prolonged immersion in water, I anticipated some change in behavior like what you're alluding to. But to my surprise, he's more than 100%. In fact, what's shocking, a few days ago was his elder brother's birthday. And for the first time, he was singing happy birthday to you.
Wow. He didn't
Yes.
have that vocabulary.
He didn't have that before. But he sang the whole song, and he's actually picked up new words from the time he was discharged to today.
Wow. People of God, what more can you ask of this God? Men of God, just over to you, men of God. For me, I've run out of words. I can't say more. But just that this God is amazing. He's miraculous. He does everything exceedingly abundantly above what we ask of him, above what we expect of him. He supersedes everything and all other gods that are known on this planet.
People of God, what more can I say? Our Father resurrected this child from the dead. And we all have got situations that we think we know have died. And He has come today, our Father, to resurrect our lives. I can't say more. All I can say, let's celebrate what our Father and our Mother has done in this place. This is an unusual testimony, people of God. Come on, let's clap our hands. Let's clap our hands. Let's acknowledge the grace of our parents in this place. Life has been restored. Come on, people of God, let's clap our hands. Let's celebrate.